Nobody paid much attention to Nurse Rachel Carter. That was exactly how she liked it. Mercy Valley Medical Center employed over 300 nurses. Rachel was just one more face among them. 32 years old, brown hair tied into a practical bun, blue scrubs, calm smile, quiet personality. Nothing remarkable. At least on the surface. Most doctors barely noticed her. Patients loved her. Co-workers respected her. But nobody really knew her, not even close. They knew she always volunteered for difficult shifts. They knew she never panicked. They knew she could remain calm when everyone else was losing their minds. What they didn't know was why the truth sat buried beneath 10 years of classified military records. A heightened records that officially didn't exist. A records that would never appear in any background check. Records that described operations in places most people couldn't find on a map. Rachel intended to keep it that way forever. Her military life was over. At least that's what she kept telling herself. The hospital was where she belonged now. Saving lives, helping people, building something normal, a peaceful life. For 2 years, that plan worked perfectly until Thursday, the day everything changed. It began like any other shift. The emergency department was packed. Patients filled every room. Doctors rushed from bed to bed. Nurses barely had time to breathe. Rachel moved calmly through the chaos, checking medications, updating charts, comforting frightened patients, doing what she always did. Then the ambulance arrived. A gunshot victim, male, mid-30s, critical condition. The trauma team immediately mobilized. Rachel joined them. The patient was bleeding badly. Multiple wounds, possible internal injuries. Doctors fought to stabilize him. Then something strange happened. The unconscious man suddenly grabbed Rachel's wrist hard. His eyes opened just for a second, long enough to whisper 3 words. 3 words nobody else heard. They found me. Rachel froze only briefly. Then the man lost consciousness again. The monitor alarm screamed. Doctors focused on saving him. Nobody noticed Rachel's expression. Nobody except Dr. Michael Reynolds, Chief of Emergency Medicine, 48 years old, sharp, observant, experienced. He noticed everything, especially people. And for a split second, Rachel looked afraid, not concerned, not worried, afraid. Then it vanished like it had never been there. The doctor frowned. Something felt off. Very off. The gunshot victim was rushed into surgery. The ER returned to normal or tried to. Rachel continued working, but her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance, toward the windows, toward the parking lot, scanning, watching, calculating old habits. Dangerous habits, the kind she'd spent years trying to forget. Then she saw them. 3 men entering through the main doors. Expensive clothes, calm expressions, confident movement. Most people would have ignored them. Rachel didn't because she noticed something. The way they walked, the way they watched exits, the way they observed security cameras, the way they positioned themselves, professionals, not civilians, not visitors, something else. One of the men looked directly at her for just a second, then looked away. Rachel's blood ran cold because she recognized him. Not his name, not his face, his eyes. Predators recognize predators, and those eyes belonged to a hunter. The nurse immediately turned away, pretending nothing happened inside. Every alarm bell was ringing. Then the hospital intercom crackled. A routine announcement, nothing unusual. But Rachel wasn't listening anymore because she already knew. The men hadn't come for medical treatment. They hadn't come to visit family. They had come for someone. And deep down, she feared that someone might be her. What Rachel didn't know was that within the next hour, the entire hospital would become a hostage scene. And the hostage taker was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He was about to choose the wrong nurse. Rachel Carter watched the three men from across the emergency department. They weren't trying to hide. That was the problem. People trying to avoid attention usually acted nervous. These men acted comfortable, confident, like they belonged there, like they owned the place. One of them approached the reception desk, smiled politely, asked a few questions. The receptionist answered without suspicion. Why would she suspect anything? The man looked like a successful businessman. Expensive watch, perfect haircut, friendly smile, the kind of person nobody feared. Rachel knew better because she had spent years learning something important. The most dangerous people rarely look dangerous. The nurse quietly stepped into a medication room, closed the door, then pulled out her phone. A number sat memorized in her head, a number she hadn't called in over 2 years. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then stopped. No, not yet. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe this was nothing. Maybe she was letting old fears control her. The phone disappeared back into her pocket. Meanwhile, the three men continued moving through the hospital, watching, observing, searching. One eventually stopped outside surgery, exactly where the gunshot victim had been taken. Rachel saw that, too. And suddenly, her stomach tightened. The wounded man, the whisper, "They found me." The pieces were starting to fit together, and Rachel didn't like the picture. Not one bit. Then everything changed. At 3:17 p.m., the first scream echoed through the hospital lobby. Loud, terrified, everyone froze. Patients looked up. Doctors stopped walking. Nurses turned toward the entrance. Then came the gunshot. Boom. The sound shook the building. Instant chaos erupted. People screamed. Visitors ran. Children cried. A second gunshot followed. Then a third. The hospital transformed instantly. Rachel didn't panic. Years of training prevented that. Instead, she moved fast, purposefully toward the sound. Most people ran away. Rachel ran toward it. The lobby looked like a nightmare. Patients hiding behind chairs, families crawling across the floor, security guards drawing weapons and standing in the center of it all. The three men, only now they weren't pretending anymore. Rifles, body armor, military-grade equipment. The friendly smiles were gone. One security guard lay unconscious near the entrance. Another had been disarmed. The lead gunman grabbed a hospital administrator, pressed a pistol against his head. The entire lobby fell silent. Then the gunman spoke, his voice calm, controlled, professional. Nobody moves. Nobody did. The administrator trembled. Doctors stood frozen. Nurses stood frozen. Patients cried quietly. The lead gunman scanned the crowd, then smiled. We only want one person. Rachel felt her pulse slow, not increase, slow. A strange thing happened when danger became real. Her mind became clearer, sharper, focused. The gunman continued. Bring us the patient from operating room 3. Silence. Do that. He pressed the pistol harder against the administrator's head. And nobody gets hurt. A lie. Rachel knew it immediately. Men like this always lied. The hospital director stepped forward, hands raised, trying to negotiate. The gunman struck him across the face. The director collapsed, blood running from his nose. Several nurses gasped. The lead gunman smiled. Anyone else? Nobody volunteered. Good choice, Rachel watched carefully, counting. 3 gunmen visible. Maybe more, probably more. Then something unexpected happened. A little girl started crying. 6 years old, maybe 7. She stood beside her mother, terrified. The sound echoed through the lobby. The gunman turned toward her, annoyed, not angry, annoyed, which somehow felt worse. The little girl cried harder. The man started walking toward her. Rachel moved instantly before she even realized she'd decided. She stepped directly between the gunman and the child. The entire lobby froze. The little girl stared. The mother stared. The gunman stared. Rachel stood perfectly still. Blue scrubs, hospital badge, ordinary nurse, nothing threatening. The man smirked. You volunteering? Rachel's voice remained calm. She's scared. The gunman laughed. So am I. A few of his men laughed, too. The nurse didn't. Neither did the little girl. The gunman stepped closer, studying her. Something about Rachel bothered him. He couldn't explain why. Then he smiled, an ugly smile, and suddenly pointed his pistol directly at her. Congratulations. The lobby became silent. You just became my hostage around them. Doctors looked horrified. Nurses looked horrified. The little girl started crying again. But Rachel remained calm because the hostage taker had just made a terrible mistake. He thought he'd chosen an ordinary nurse. He had no idea who she really was. The pistol pointed directly at Rachel's head. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The lobby felt frozen in time. The little girl clung to her mother's leg. Doctors stood helplessly. Nurses looked terrified. The gunman smiled. Rachel didn't. Her eyes never left his. The man noticed. Most hostages looked scared. Most hostages cried. Most hostages begged. Rachel did none of those things, which immediately made him suspicious. The gunman grabbed her arm. Hard move. Rachel allowed herself to be pulled forward. The key word was allowed. Years ago during special operations training, one instructor repeated the same lesson hundreds of times. If someone takes control of your body, take control of their mind. Rachel wasn't thinking about escaping. Not yet. She was gathering information. The man's grip, his balance, his dominant hand, his reaction speed. Every detail mattered. The gunman dragged her toward the center of the lobby, then shoved her beside him. The pistol remained against her temple. Everybody listened. Silence. The man scanned the room. We get the patient. Another pause. We leave. A lie. Rachel knew it. The hospital director knew it. Even some doctors knew it. But nobody challenged him because challenging armed men was usually a bad idea. Meanwhile, the police had arrived outside. Squad cars surrounded the building. Officers took positions. Point News helicopters appeared overhead. The situation was escalating fast, very fast. A young patrol officer looked through the glass entrance, then immediately reported what he saw. Multiple hostages. His commander nodded grimly. Any visible casualties? None yet. The commander exhaled. That word mattered. Yet back inside, the lead gunman received a radio transmission. He listened quietly, then nodded. Understood. Rachel paid close attention. Every word, every tone, every reaction. The transmission ended. The gunman smiled. Good news. Whatever they were waiting for was getting closer. Then he looked at Rachel, studied her for several seconds. You're calm. The nurse shrugged slightly, the pistol pressed harder against her head. I said, you're calm. Rachel finally answered. I'm a nurse. Several hostages looked confused. The gunman laughed. So. The nurse looked around the lobby, at the crying families, at the frightened children, at the injured security guard, then back at him. I deal with emergencies. Several doctors exchanged glances. The answer sounded reasonable, normal, believable. The gunman didn't buy it. Not completely. Something still bothered him. Then he noticed something strange. Rachel's hands weren't shaking, not even slightly. His narrowed eyes locked onto her. Interesting. Very interesting. Elsewhere in the hospital, the surgery team remained trapped inside operating room 3. The gunshot victim was still alive, barely. Doctors worked desperately trying to save him, trying to protect him because everyone now understood one thing. The hostage takers wanted that patient badly. Then the patient suddenly regained consciousness weakly, painfully. One surgeon leaned closer. "Can you hear me?" The man nodded barely, then whispered something shocking. "Don't give me to them." The doctor frowned. "Who are they?" The patient's eyes widened. Fear filled his face. Real fear. Then he answered, the people who killed my team." The room became silent. The surgeon stared. The patient continued, "They'll kill everyone." The doctor felt a chill run down his spine because the man wasn't worried about himself. He was worried about the hospital. Meanwhile, back in the lobby, the lead gunman continued studying Rachel. Something felt familiar. Not her face, not her voice, her posture, her eyes, the way she observed everything, like she was constantly calculating. Then it hit him. He'd seen that behavior before. Military. The realization made him smile. Then he leaned close to Rachel's ear. Former military. The nurse looked at him expressionless. The gunman smiled wider. Interesting. Very interesting. Then he quietly whispered, "What unit?" The lobby couldn't hear. Only Rachel could for the first time. Something changed in her eyes. Not fear, not panic, recognition. Because that wasn't a random question. And suddenly Rachel realized something terrifying. This man wasn't just a criminal. He had military experience, too. Which meant he might recognize exactly who she was. And if that happened, the entire situation would become much more dangerous for everyone. The gunman kept staring at Rachel. Military. The thought wouldn't leave his mind. Something about her felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet, just wrong. Like a piece of a puzzle sitting in the wrong place. The nurse met his gaze calmly. The lobby remained silent. Everyone was watching. Everyone was afraid. Everyone except Rachel. The gunman noticed that too. Then he smiled. "What's your name?" "Rachel." "Just Rachel." The nurse shrugged. The man laughed softly. Then something unexpected happened. He lowered his voice. "What branch?" Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly. Very slightly. Most people wouldn't have noticed. He did because he was trained to. The gunman smiled. "There it is." Rachel answered carefully. "I was a medic." A lie. Not a complete lie, but a lie. The man laughed again. "No." Silence. "You weren't." Several hostages looked confused. The nurse remained calm. The gunman studied her, then slowly shook his head. "Medics don't watch exits." Silence. "Medics don't count shooters." Another pause. "And medics definitely don't keep checking my reflection in the glass." The lobby became completely silent. Rachel didn't respond because he was right. The gunman stepped closer, very close, then whispered, "Who are you?" The nurse looked directly into his eyes and smiled just a little. That smile bothered him immediately because it wasn't the smile of a hostage. It was the smile of someone who knew something. Then a voice suddenly interrupted. A young nurse, maybe 24, terrified, crying. "Please," everyone turned. The young nurse stood beside an elderly patient. The patient needed oxygen desperately. The hostage-taker frowned annoyed. "What?" The nurse pointed toward the patient. He's crashing. The old man struggled to breathe. The monitors attached to him were beeping rapidly. Rachel immediately knew the problem. The patient wouldn't survive much longer without treatment. The gunman looked irritated, like the dying man was an inconvenience. Then he looked at Rachel. Go. The nurse blinked. What? Help him. Rachel froze. Interesting. The man wasn't stupid. Very interesting, because he had just created a dilemma. If she helped the patient, she moved away from him. If she refused, the patient might die. Rachel immediately walked toward the old man. The hostage-taker followed, never more than a few feet away, still holding the pistol, still watching. The nurse knelt beside the patient, checked his pulse, checked his oxygen, then began working fast, efficient, professional. The old man slowly stabilized. The beeping slowed. His breathing improved. The family started crying with relief. Several hostages looked grateful. Even the gunman looked impressed. Then something caught his attention. Rachel's hands again. No shaking. Not even now. Not even with a pistol nearby. Not even surrounded by armed men. Interesting. Very interesting. Outside the hospital, the police command center was growing desperate. Negotiations had failed. The hostage-takers refused every demand. Refused every compromise. The situation was deteriorating fast. Then a black SUV arrived. Unmarked, no police insignia, no government markings. A man stepped out, tall, gray-haired, military bearing. The police commander immediately approached. Who are you? The man handed over credentials. The commander looked down, then immediately went pale. The credentials disappeared just as quickly. What do you need? The newcomer looked toward the hospital, then asked a single question. Is Rachel Carter inside? The commander blinked. One of the nurses. The man nodded. The commander frowned. Yes. Silence. Then the newcomer sighed. A long sigh, like a man realizing something unavoidable. What? The commander looked confused. The newcomer stared at the hospital, then quietly answered, if Rachel Carter is inside. Another pause. The hostage-takers are in serious trouble. Back inside, the lead gunman's radio crackled. He listened carefully, then smiled. Good news. Very good news. The patient from operating room 3 had finally been located. The surgery wing had been compromised. The target would soon be in their hands. The operation was almost over. Then Rachel heard something. Not through the radio, not through conversation. A sound. A tiny sound, almost impossible to notice. Almost a metallic click. Her eyes immediately shifted. One of the gunmen near the entrance was planting something. Something small, something electronic, something attached beneath a waiting room chair. Oh. Rachel's blood ran cold because she recognized exactly what it was. An explosive charge. And suddenly she understood the hostage situation was never supposed to end with negotiations. The hostage-takers weren't planning to leave. They were planning to erase everyone, including themselves. And unless Rachel stopped them, hundreds of people inside Mercy Valley Hospital were about to die. Rachel's eyes locked onto the explosive device. Small, compact, professional, exactly the kind of charge used when someone wanted maximum casualties in a confined space. The realization hit instantly. This was never a hostage negotiation. Never. The patient was only part of the mission. The real objective was much larger. Kill the witnesses. Kill the target. Destroy the evidence. Leave nothing behind. Rachel slowly looked away, careful not to reveal she'd noticed. The gunman beside her continued watching hostages, unaware. Good. Very good. The nurse returned her attention to the elderly patient, pretending everything was normal. Inside, her mind was racing. One bomb meant there were probably more, many more. Then another realization struck. The lead gunman didn't know. Rachel looked toward him. Really looked. His expression, his behavior, his reactions. He wasn't acting like a suicide bomber. He wasn't acting like someone planning mass murder. He looked like a contractor, a hired operator, someone completing a mission, which meant one thing. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone higher up, someone willing to sacrifice everyone, including the hostage takers. Interesting. Very interesting. Then the lead gunman's radio crackled again. He listened. His expression changed. Immediately the smile vanished. His jaw tightened. Not good news. Definitely not good news. What happened? One of his men asked. The leader answered quietly. Someone moved the patient. The room froze. Rachel remained expressionless. Inside. She smiled. The doctors had done something smart. Very smart. The gunman looked furious. Then Keats' radio. Find him, static answered. Then a nervous voice spoke. We're trying. The leader's expression darkened further. Trying wasn't good enough. Then he noticed Rachel watching him. Their eyes met for a brief moment. The gunman smiled. A cold smile. Then suddenly grabbed her arm hard. The lobby gasped. The nurse remained calm again, which only bothered him more. The gunman dragged her toward the center of the room, then turned toward everyone. New plan. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The pistol pressed against Rachel's side. The hostages watched helplessly. Then the gunman pointed toward a large television mounted in the lobby. Turn it on. One of his men obeyed. The screen flickered to life. News helicopters filled the display. Police vehicles, emergency crews, live coverage. The entire city was watching. The gunman smiled. Perfect. Then he looked directly into the camera. Listen carefully. The lobby became silent. So can the world. The man continued. We want the patient. Another pause. 1 hour silence. After that, his eyes shifted toward Rachel. The nurse immediately understood he was making her part of the message. The gunman pulled her closer, then pressed the pistol against her head again. Several hostages cried. A young doctor cursed under his breath. The lead gunman smiled. After 1 hour, another pause. The nurse dies first. The lobby erupted. Families cried. Nurses begged. Doctors shouted. The gunman fired a round into the ceiling. Boom. Silence returned instantly. Rachel remained calm. The television camera zoomed in. Millions of people now watched her, a terrified hostage. At least that's what they thought. Outside. Inside the police command center. The gay-haired man stared at the television, then laughed. Actually laughed. The police commander looked horrified. What's funny? The newcomer pointed toward Rachel. Look at her. The commander frowned. She's about to be executed. The older man shook his head. No. Silence. She's calculating. The commander looked again closer and suddenly saw it. The nurse wasn't panicking, wasn't crying, wasn't pleading. Her eyes were moving constantly, counting, observing, planning. The gray-haired man smiled, then quietly said, God help those idiots. Back inside, Rachel's attention shifted toward the explosive device again. Then, clears throat, toward another waiting area, then another. There, a second charge hidden beneath a table. Professional placement, professional concealment, and suddenly she understood something terrifying. There weren't just one or two bombs. There were many, enough to destroy most of the hospital. Then a voice behind her whispered, "Rachel." The nurse recognized it immediately. Dr. Reynolds standing among the hostages trying not to attract attention. The doctor looked terrified, then whispered again, "What do we do?" The nurse stared ahead, expressionless, then quietly answered, "Trust me." The doctor froze because those two words sounded completely different coming from Rachel. Not like a nurse, not like a hostage, like a commander. Then something happened. Something nobody expected. The lead gunman's radio suddenly erupted with shouting, panicked shouting, several voices, chaos. The leader immediately grabbed the radio. What happened? The answer made his face go white. Actually white because one of his men had just discovered who Rachel Carter really was. And suddenly, the hostage-taker realized he hadn't chosen a hostage. He had chosen the most dangerous person in the building. The lead gunman's face lost all color. The panic coming through his radio was impossible to ignore. "Say that again." Static. Then a terrified voice answered. "We identified the nurse." Silence. The gunman stared at Rachel slowly, carefully, then asked, "Who is she?" The answer froze him completely. The voice crackled through the radio. "Special operations." The lobby became silent, not because anyone else heard, only the gunman had. But Rachel saw the change immediately. Fear. Real fear. Then the voice continued. "Former Tier 1 operator." The gunman's grip tightened around his pistol. His eyes locked onto Rachel. The nurse remained calm. The radio operator wasn't finished. Confirmed combat deployments. Another pause. Confirmed hostage rescue missions. The gunman looked sick. Then came the final sentence. The one that changed everything. Her unit nickname was Ghost Angel. The lead gunman slowly lowered the radio. His eyes never left Rachel. The nurse sighed very quietly. Because now things were complicated, very complicated. The gunman stared, then laughed. A nervous laugh, an uncomfortable laugh, the kind people made when they suddenly realized they were standing on a landmine. Then he looked at her. Really looked at her. The calm expression. The steady breathing, the complete absence of fear. Suddenly everything made sense, the military posture, the awareness, the confidence, the eyes, especially the eyes. And for the first time all day, the hostage-taker felt vulnerable. Meanwhile, the hostages noticed something strange. The armed man suddenly looked uncomfortable. Rachel looked exactly the same. The dynamic had shifted. Everyone could feel it, even if they didn't understand why. Then the gunman made a mistake. A big mistake. He stepped closer, too close, trying to reassert control, trying to prove he wasn't afraid. Rachel immediately noticed. Distance matters. Distance always matters. Years of training had taught her that. The gunman pointed the pistol at her chest. "Who are you?" The nurse smiled slightly. "You wouldn't believe me." The answer unsettled him even more. Then another voice erupted through the radio. Louder this time, more urgent. "Boss." The gunman grabbed the radio. "What now?" The answer came quickly. "Someone is disarming the charges." Silence. The gunman's eyes widened. "What?" The voice sounded panicked. "Someone is finding the explosives." Rachel smiled. Tiny, almost invisible. But the gunman saw it and suddenly he understood. The nurse wasn't reacting to the situation. The situation was reacting to her. The realization hit hard, very hard. Then the lobby lights suddenly flickered once, twice, 3 times. Rachel immediately understood the signal. So did the lead gunman because someone else was now in the game. The police, the FBI, maybe both. Outside, the gray-haired man from the black SUV watched the building carefully, then nodded. The operation was beginning. After hours of waiting, his team was finally in position. Federal hostage rescue team, the best in the country, and even they seemed nervous. One operator glanced toward the building, then toward the gray-haired man. "Sir." The older man nodded. "What?" The operator hesitated, then asked, "Is she really inside?" The older man smiled. "Yes." Silence. Then the operator laughed. "Those hostage takers are screwed." Back inside, the lead gunman suddenly grabbed Rachel again, this time much harder. Fear was taking over. Fear made people dangerous. The nurse knew that. The man dragged her toward the lobby entrance, toward the glass doors, toward visibility. Because scared men wanted leverage, and Rachel was his leverage. At least he thought so. Then something unexpected happened. A little voice spoke up. The same little girl Rachel had protected earlier. The child stared directly at the gunman, then asked, "Why are you scared of the nurse?" The entire lobby froze, absolutely froze. The gunman stared at her. The little girl stared back, completely innocent, completely honest, and accidentally devastating. Because suddenly, everyone was thinking the same thing. Why was he scared? The gunman looked around. Doctors, patients, families, all watching, all noticing. And for the first time, the hostage taker realized he was losing control. Fast, very fast. Then another voice echoed through the building. Not from the radio, not from the television, from the hospital intercom. A calm voice, professional, authoritative. "Attention." The entire hospital froze. Rachel recognized the voice immediately. The gray-haired man, her former commanding officer. The voice continued. "Rachel." Silence. A tiny smile appeared on the nurse's face. Then the man spoke words that made every hostage-taker panic. "Permission granted." The lead gunman's blood ran cold because every operator in the world knew what those words meant. And suddenly Rachel Carter stopped acting like a hostage. The entire hospital froze. Even the gunman, even the hostages, even Rachel. For a brief second because everyone had heard it. "Permission granted." The words echoed through the building. The lead gunman's face went pale. He knew exactly what they meant. Military operators didn't say those words casually. Permission granted meant one thing. The rules had changed. Rachel slowly lifted her eyes. The fear was gone. The hesitation was gone. The hostage act was over. And for the first time all day, the lead gunman saw the real Rachel Carter. Not the nurse, not the hostage, the operator, the woman who had spent years ending situations exactly like this one. The little girl noticed it, too. The child blinked, then whispered. "The nurse looks different." Nobody answered because she did. The gunman instinctively stepped backward. Big mistake. Rachel had been waiting for that. Waiting for him to create distance. Waiting for him to relax his grip. Waiting for him to make one error, and he finally had. The nurse moved fast, faster than anyone in the lobby could follow. One moment she was standing beside him, the next she wasn't. The gunman felt his wrist twist hard. Pain exploded through his arm. The pistol dropped before it even hit the floor. Rachel caught it. The entire lobby gasped. The gunman stared, unable to process what had happened. Then Rachel drove him into the ground hard. The impact shook the floor. The hostage-taker never even saw the second move or the third or the fourth. Within 3 seconds, the man was unconscious. The lobby erupted. People screamed. Doctors stared. Nurses stared. The little girl actually clapped. Then chaos exploded. The remaining gunmen reacted immediately. Weapons came up. Hostages dropped to the floor. Rachel moved. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Every action precise, every movement calculated, years of training, years of combat, years of survival. One gunman fired. Rachel shoved a hospital gurney sideways. The round smashed into metal. Sparks flew everywhere. A second gunman rushed forward. Rachel met him halfway. The rifle never fired. The man crashed into a row of waiting room chairs. The weapon slid across the floor, gone. A third gunman appeared near the entrance. Then suddenly stopped because red laser dots appeared across his chest. 12510, clears throat, Federal Hostage Rescue Team. The windows shattered. Operators flooded the building. The siege was over almost. The gunman slowly raised his hands. Smart choice. Very smart choice. But Rachel wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because something felt wrong. Very wrong. Then she remembered the bombs, the explosives, the hidden charges. The hospital wasn't safe yet. Not even close. The nurse immediately grabbed the unconscious leader, pulled him upright. The man groaned, disoriented, confused. Rachel looked directly into his eyes. How many? The man laughed weakly, then spat blood. No idea. Rachel frowned. What? The hostage-taker smiled bitterly, then pointed upward. Those weren't our explosives. The room froze. Rachel's blood ran cold because she already knew who that meant. The real threat. The unseen threat. The man behind everything. Then the hospital intercom crackled again. Everyone froze. The familiar voice returned. Gabriel Mercer, the architect behind the operation, the man nobody had seen. The man nobody had caught. The voice sounded amused. Very amused. Impressive silence. Truly impressive. Rachel slowly looked upward, listening, calculating, waiting. The voice continued. You always were difficult to kill. The entire room stared at Rachel. The nurse stared at the ceiling expressionless. Mercer laughed softly, then spoke words that chilled everyone. Unfortunately, a pause. The hospital still dies today. The intercom clicked off. Silence followed. Then every fire alarm in the building activated simultaneously. Every single one. The sound echoed throughout the hospital. And Rachel suddenly realized something terrifying. The explosives were never in the lobby. They were never near the hostages. They were hidden deep inside the hospital's infrastructure. And there were only minutes left to find them. Every fire alarm in Mercy Valley Medical Center activated at once. The sound was deafening. Patients screamed. Doctors looked around in panic. Federal operators immediately grabbed radios. The situation had changed again, and not in a good way. Rachel Carter didn't move. Not at first, because she was thinking fast, very fast. Gabriel Mercer wasn't the type to bluff. Never. If he said the hospital would die, then he believed it. The question was, how? The answer arrived seconds later. A security officer came sprinting down the hallway, breathing hard, terrified. The boiler room. Rachel turned instantly. What about it? The officer swallowed, then answered. Motion sensors detected activity. The nurse's eyes narrowed. There it was. The real target, not the lobby, not the hostages, not even the patient, the hospital itself. Mercer wanted a catastrophic infrastructure failure. Gas lines, steam systems, backup generators, one chain reaction, one explosion. Hundreds dead. Rachel grabbed a radio. Evacuate everyone. The federal team leader nodded, already issuing orders. Doctors began moving patients. Nurses pushed beds. Families rushed toward exits. The hospital transformed into organized chaos. Rachel started running. The boiler room sat beneath the oldest section of the building. 4 floors down, a maze of tunnels, maintenance corridors, industrial equipment, the perfect place to hide and the perfect place to kill people. The federal team followed, but Rachel was faster, years faster. By the time they reached the underground level, she was already moving through the tunnels. The heat increased. Steam hissed from old pipes. The air felt heavy, dangerous. Then she saw him, Gabriel Mercer, standing beside a massive control panel, calm, relaxed, almost bored, as if he had been expecting her. The man smiled. "Hello, Rachel." The nurse stopped several yards away, watching, calculating. Mercer held a small remote detonator. Not dramatic, not flashy, just deadly. The man looked exactly as Rachel remembered. Sharp suit, gray hair, cold eyes. The eyes of someone who viewed people as numbers, assets, liabilities, nothing more. "You've caused me a lot of problems today." Rachel didn't answer. Mercer laughed, then nodded. Still not very talkative. Silence. The older man looked toward the ceiling. Above them sat hundreds of patients, doctors, children, families, lives. So many people. Rachel finally spoke. "Walk away." Mercer smiled. "No." The answer came instantly without hesitation because Mercer genuinely believed he was untouchable. The man lifted the detonator. The history is written by survivors. Rachel's expression never changed. Not today. Mercer laughed, then pressed the button. Nothing happened. The smile disappeared immediately. He pressed it again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. The man stared at the detonator, confused, then furious. Rachel smiled slightly, the first genuine smile all day because she already knew Linda Brooks, head nurse Linda Brooks, while everyone else focused on hostages. The older nurse had followed maintenance maps, found the control systems, found the detonators, and disconnected everything. Mercer finally understood. His face twisted with anger. "You let a nurse stop me?" Rachel answered calmly. "Big mistake." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Mercer reached inside his jacket. Weapon too slow. Rachel moved first. The distance disappeared instantly. One strike, the pistol fell. A second strike. Mercer hit the ground hard. The fight ended almost before it started because men like Mercer spent years hiding behind others. Rachel spent years doing the opposite. Federal operators stormed into the room seconds later, weapons raised, but the fight was already over. Mercer stared upward, defeated. For the first time in years, the man finally realized something. The hospital hadn't beaten him. The police hadn't beaten him. The government hadn't beaten him. A nurse had. Hours later, the sun was rising. The nightmare was over. Patients were safe. Families were safe. The explosives were neutralized. The hostage takers were in custody. Mercer was finished and Mercy Valley Medical Center still stood outside the hospital. Reporters filled the street. Emergency lights flashed everywhere. Doctors and nurses sat on curbs exhausted. Some cried, some laughed, some simply stared into space. Was she trying to process what had happened? The little girl Rachel had protected earlier suddenly appeared holding her mother's hand. She walked directly toward the nurse. Then hugged her tightly. The little girl looked up. "Are you a superhero?" Several nearby nurses laughed. Rachel smiled, then shook her head. "No." The child frowned. "But you saved everybody." Rachel looked toward the hospital, toward the doctors, toward the nurses, toward Linda, toward the people who never stopped helping others. Then she answered, so did they. The little girl thought about it, then nodded, satisfied. Nearby, Dr. Reynolds approached, still trying to understand everything. The doctor looked at Rachel, then shook his head. You were special operations. Rachel sighed. The secret was obviously gone now. The doctor waited. Finally, she smiled, a tired smile. Then answered, I was a nurse. Dr. Reynolds laughed. The nurses around them laughed too because somehow that answer felt more impressive. And as the morning sun rose over Mercy Valley Medical Center, everyone understood the truth. The hostage-taker had chosen the wrong nurse. Not because she was special operations, but because even after everything she'd done, even after all the training, all the missions, all the secrets, Rachel Carter still chose to be a nurse. And that was what made her extraordinary.